So, welcome to an introduction to the 7 steps to conscious health practice. I'm really excited to see so many people here and to see that you've come from far and wide or joining me from far and wide. Um, this is the second introduction that I've given, but the reason for it is I've found that things are subtly changing. And the last introduction was before or was to explain about the 4-day live workshop, and it was broken into an explanation over the 4 days what happened, whereas this time I want to really break it down into the 7 steps in particular. And this is partly because I think it is more important to go into that detail in the introduction, but also because we are putting the workshop online for people to follow it in their own time. um, I've realized that sort of getting people, certainly with some, with some of the physical issues that we deal with, to come to a 4-day workshop, it's a little bit overwhelming and a little bit tiring. And although we're very gentle, I prefer the idea that I know that suits some people, but it doesn't suit everybody. So I wanted to make it accessible to more people and to people who might learn in different ways, or people who might want to pace themselves in a different way. As well as that, we'll be having the kind of 7 steps, the core recordings, but I can then continue to add content and support. And it's always been the aim as I build conscious health practice to build an online support website, and to create a group really that where you can support each other, to build a community of people who can work together and support each other. So the community has been growing. I've given the live training 3 times now, and it's been very subtly different each time, as it would be depending on the group of people. But I also want to, in this introduction, share with you some of the things that I've learned in that time. So please bear with me as I go rather quickly through what is quite an in-depth course. I'm going to give you an introduction and an overview, and then I'm going to do a couple of the exercises. And again, they're only going to be an introduction to those exercises, really. If you haven't already seen that there's a handout that you can download, please grab that now. You won't need it immediately, but it is for in a little while, so you can grab that. And if you haven't picked up the message, that I lose the question box, so please put your messages into the chat box and send them directly to me, because I can't see the question box when I'm in the full screen. Okay, so if I'm going to now put hands down from people who've waved and say thank you. And that means that from now on, if you put your hand up, it does mean you have a question. But if you could type to me in the chat box, that would be very helpful. Okay. So, welcome. I'm just going to start by giving you what I feel is the simplest definition that when people say to me, "What is conscious health practice?" It's really an accumulation. It's really the bringing together of everything I've been studying, learning, practicing, experiencing for myself. And those of you that know me from various courses and trainings, which I'll mention in a moment, will know that I've done very specific types of training. So it does bring together some of that information, but I really feel that the approach I've come up with is quite different. Well, it's certainly different to the original way I've been working and the way I was taught to work by the masters that I've trained with, and by the sort of the standard school. And I'm going to explain a bit more about that when we get into it. So the definition is the conscious awareness of the body's intelligent response to stress and of our ability to influence and self-regulate our physical, mental, and emotional health and well-being. So we'll talk a bit more about the conscious awareness, because it's true that a lot of the beliefs that we live by and that we perceive things by are obviously in the subconscious mind. What I aim to do and help people to do is to actually connect together the conscious and the subconscious mind. So they're actually working with a superconscious mind. Okay. But the way we know what's going on is having a conscious awareness of it. So yes, we've got symptoms and they may be being triggered as a result of something going on in my subconscious mind and my subconscious perceptions. But I need some sort of conscious awareness of it to be able to actively um, participate in that and have something to do with what's going on. So that's why we're talking about conscious awareness. Okay. Now, I'm just going to pause for 1 second and come out of the full screen, because I just want to check that I don't have any questions in the background. Oh, see lots of comments. See, you have to message me, not in the question box, I'm afraid, but in the chat box. Otherwise, I'm going to have to stop the recording to come and have a look. I don't know why, I'm afraid, but that seems to be what's happening. Okay. So, so my training, I've been practicing for 5 years. I came to into this area of practice. I used to be a teacher, but I came because I needed to for myself. I had physical, mental, and emotional disease or dis-ease. I was unable to control my rageful outbursts, and I was violent. I was a danger to people that I cared about and to myself. And I had very severe depression and chronic fatigue, chronic bad back, and a bunch of whole other symptoms that I really kind of reached the end of my tether. And in the last 5 years, I've studied and begun to practice and become quite an experienced practitioner. And really, the areas in which I've studied cover really specializing in the physical, mental, and emotional field. So I've made sure that I've kept my studies very broad and supportive in all of those areas. So from the extremes of being, a qigong trainer and teacher, right through to being, an EFT master practitioner and a meta health master trainer. So I've kind of got a very broad skill set. Now, what I noticed was that for each of these individual areas of study, obviously that there are connections with other things that I'm studying, but the way that I was starting to work was using some of the skills maybe from one area of study and combining them with my knowledge and understanding from another area. And I wasn't really using any one thing. And I know that a lot of therapists do work like that. But what I was interested in was what made something successful, and so when it was being successful, what was it about it that made it work? And at the same time, when something wasn't working so well, what was it about it that was causing it to be unsuccessful? So really, I started to study, what are the common denominators of the way that I'm working and of the therapies and the interventions that I'm using that make things more likely to be successful with different people. So I started to really want to understand, how can we be successful in our own change work and in work with clients, and understand more about what's going on a deeper level. So I was a mentor for matrix reimprinting and EFT and emotrance and meta health. And I noticed that there's quite a lot of the questions that came from the people, the practitioners who needed help. They were always on a theme. They always seem to come back to or point to this in the same direction. And that's really what made me start to notice what it was that I was doing differently. So when I talk about what is different about the conscious health practice, I've found that it's really important to just stop for a moment. So when I point these key points here, honoring where we are in our individual journey, this is something that I think we say quite a lot, but I don't think we give ourselves a chance to do. And just referring back to one of the questions that I have from, I'm not going to mention any names, but for somebody that is dealing with healing cancer at the moment, gastrointestinal cancer. If you don't mind me just mentioning, the words that you used was desperately trying to heal my past as well as loving myself. And it, for me, that kind of sums up a lot about the way we generally work with our stuff. And what I want you to think about in particular, but everybody to think about as I talk through this program, is the word desperately. It creates a certain chemical environment in the body, and we do desperately try to heal ourselves. I was so unhappy with where I was that I did desperately want to change it. And when we reach the point where we are hating things about ourselves, frustrated about where we are, annoyed with our body, afraid that we're not going to heal, all of those emotions create a very specific chemical environment. They actually put us into fight flight. So if we're dealing with something like anxiety, or we're dealing with depression, if we are going into fight flight to heal our issues, we're kind of adding insult to injury. So the first step that I do with clients and with people on the course now is I actually invite them to just stop. The beginning of this process, step 1, unit 1, is actually to stop trying to fix yourself. We understand we're going to look at what it is that we don't like, what our symptoms are, our mental, emotional, and physical symptoms. But actually, we're going to just put a pause on trying to fix these things just for now. And instead of trying to fix those things about us, we're going to start to look at why they're happening. What is it that's triggering them and causing them to happen? And we start to look at the difference between a symptom, a trigger, and the root cause, the cause of it. Because those are three very different things. And because we're in this away from energy, we're in fight flight trying to heal, we end up locking ourselves in to complicating the issue of healing. Okay. And the reason that I've come back to using the HeartMath techniques and principles in my work, and really everything I do now is built on top of that, it's because the focus is first and foremost on using the physiology of the body to tell the body that I'm fully present. I'm here now. And as I teach the body that I'm here now and I'm present, we can then start to become more empowered in the way that we look at what's going on. So when I was doing meta health and meta medicine, I would rush into explaining everyone about this awesomeness and amazing body, and this, did you know your body's doing this, and isn't it incredible, and isn't it clever? If we can actually create some peace and presence first, when we hear that information, we do go into accepting it more. We are able to receive that information more readily. So I kind of slow the process down. So you'll notice that the next point says appreciating the amazing survival intelligence of the body and mind. Because what I want us to do when we go through this process is to really, really understand what is happening. Why is it happening? What is my body doing? What is my behavior doing? What is my response? And it really comes down, it's actually kind of a binary system, because although perceptions are very individual, it comes down to, is it safe or is it dangerous? Okay, I can't be in both of those modes at the same time. So I can't be growing and healing if I'm in a fight, flight, or freeze response, and if I'm creating that chemical environment in my body. So therefore, the focus of conscious health practice to begin with is not on fixing the problem. It is coming out of fight, flight, and freeze, coming out of the stress response and dealing with being in that stress response first. Okay, so that's a real focus, and it's become more of a focus in the last 3 times that I've run the live training, and the response has been incredible. So the idea is that it takes people then from being in that victim mode to becoming curious about what's going on. Okay, and we can only be curious again if we're not in fight flight. We're struggling. We're kind of swimming against. I think the expression is swimming against the tide. If we're trying to heal something, but we're actually spending a lot of the time afraid of either the repercussions of if I do or don't, and well, 6 areas that we're going to look at shortly. Okay, so for me, the process is to help people to by being very practical, very accessible, and hence the structures that I've created. You know, the 7 steps for this, the 6 areas of this, the 6 areas of that. It breaks it down into a framework that you can dip into and use in your daily life. Okay, and I really understand that needs to happen now, not just not just because I need it too, actually, but that's what's made it accessible for people. And the idea really is that you are more in an empowered position for safe change. Okay, we're going to talk about safety a little bit later when we've gone through the 7 different units, 7 steps. And of course, if we're talking about health practice, then it has to be sustainable. So one of the things I write shortly is that health is not something that happens to you. You know, you're active participant in your health, and it's quite a scary thing to realize that we're responsible for it, and what we're doing and what we're thinking and the way we're acting is actually impacting on our health. So I want to be careful not to frighten people with the responsibility they have to their health, but actually empower them with that information. Okay. So, so the 7 steps. I had a very good manager, business manager, who was trying to help me work out what it was that I did. And if you've ever been to that point where you're trying to set a business up and somebody says, okay, so what is it that you're trying to give to people? And you have to really go through that excruciating process of explaining it in the most basic of terms. This is what I do. Okay. And this list here is what it all boils down to. Okay. I want people to know where they are. I want them to know how they got there. I want them to know what's going on. I want them to know what that means. I want them to know what to do about it, and then know how to do it and how to sustain it. And that basically forms the 7 steps to this course. So if you come from an energy therapy background, or you come from a root cause analysis like medicine background, you may be looking at that and seeing where the bits that you know or what you do fits into that. And of course, the knowing what's going on and what that means, we're getting into the root cause analysis part there. And of course, the knowing what to do and how to do it is coming into the techniques that help us intervene in those processes and actually bring change. But it has to be a bigger picture for me. It has to be a picture that when I walk away as a coach or a therapist, the person is left with that picture and with, able to manage the detail as well as the bigger picture. So it has to be a bigger shift. It has to be a paradigm shift. We have to take people from feeling that and believing on every, to the core of their being that the world is flat, and helping them to understand that the world is round. And suddenly, we can't go back to seeing it the way we used to. So that's the aim of the course. The aim of the course is to take you from your frustration and confusion and kind of feeling of lack of impact and feeling of impotence into feeling that you really are the person that is in control of your health, and you really have many tools at your disposal. And those tools are lots of small things as well as lots of big things. Little things you do every day also have a big impact, as well as the big things and the big sessions that you have with therapists. So that's it. Now you'll notice that it says there ownership is to know where you are. Step 2 is the preparation. Sometimes I've called this perception as well, to know how you got there. The triggers and switches of what to turn us on and off and in and out of the stress response is about what's going on, what's happening to us when those things trigger us. Interpretation and investigation of what that really means and what my body's actually specifically doing, and managing and understanding how we, on a day-to-day basis, live with that, begin to instigate change, and begin to actually move into a healthy self, become our healthy self. And then mastery is when you own it for yourself. There's a lot of talk and a lot of controversy around the use of the word mastery. And mastery is really when you have learnt the concepts and the skills, and you have done them enough and practiced them enough, and you can now break the rules, and you can actually own them for yourself and make them your own. And that's really the idea of being healthy, is knowing and mastering the way that you work with your health, or the way that you own the impact you have on your health. Okay. Now, I'm not getting any comments in here, so I am going to just come out of the slideshow again and just check that I haven't got any messages in the back here that I'm missing. So something says they're being ignored. Somebody says sorry for the interruption, but no questions. Okay, that's good. Not missing anything. So you'll notice those first letters: ownership, preparation, triggers, interpretation, management, understanding, and mastery spell the word optimum. And that is what we want to achieve, the optimum working in our body, the bringing together into alignment of body, mind, and spirit, you could call it. Really bringing our emotions in alignment with everything else as well, but really getting the body working together as a system working together. So all of our organ systems, and when we look at the health plan at the end, you'll see how all of these things work together. And so we can't kind of ignore one bit. If we don't eat a healthy diet, if we don't have exercise and movement, if we don't deal with our emotions, or we don't look after our physical body, each of these areas has an impact and is something that we need to bring our attention to on a regular basis. Okay. So the 4-day workshop was broken down into the 6 elements for change, which we will talk about. So these 4 areas I'm going to talk about in more detail, but the structure of the 7 steps actually breaks over the 4 days. So I am going to introduce these 4 particular parts of this process to you, and hopefully have enough time to do that. But what we're going to do is look at the 7 steps, just each individually. So I do just want to point out there is no training at the moment in the one-to-one provider health coach or group coach, but there will be towards the end of next year. It will be a prerequisite to do this personal breakthrough workshop and be actively involved, if you like, in the membership site, so that you are participating in and interacting with others and with myself, and actively asking questions, and are really showing that you are living a conscious health practice. I don't believe in any of the things I've ever learned or taught that you can help somebody else achieve a certain state or a certain level unless you've experienced it for yourself. So you'll notice in myself, I post regularly on Facebook and places, and I'm definitely a work in progress myself. I have my own ups and downs, and I use them quite often to explain what's going on and to deliver and to kind of convey some of the concepts that I teach. It's not about being perfect. It's not about fixing everything. It's about how you view yourself as you do that. It's about stepping back out of the judgment, or if you've been judging yourself, stepping back out of judging and not judging yourself for judging. Okay. Or if you notice you were judging, just notice you were and then don't judge that. Okay. So it's all about noticing what we're doing before we start looking at why are we doing it, which brings us on to the steps. So step one, know where you are, is really realizing that your health is not something that happens to you. So the first step of the journey is really to be clear in where you are and to be kind of open and honest about it. Not to start to get frustrated about it, but just to take a step back and to actually start to look at what's really going on. So the first step is really a series of exercises that help us to focus on what it is that's going on and what it is we hope to achieve, in realistic terms. In a year from now, where would I like to be with my health? What would I like to understand about my health, about my symptoms or my behaviors? And also, what are the strengths and weaknesses that I have at the moment on my health journey? Where have I been doing things that are particularly useful and that I haven't been giving myself credit for? Or what is it that I haven't been doing, maybe that I know how to do, but I just haven't? And we're really stepping out of judgment at this stage, and we're really starting to learn to take a deep breath and to just observe how we got to where we got and what it is that we've been doing so far. This is where we start. If we do an honest appraisal at this point, this is where we start to be able to understand that not only have we got to this point, but if we've been trying for quite a while to heal something or break through something and it hasn't been working, this is where we can perhaps start to understand why it hasn't been working. Okay. And it's like I said a little bit earlier, if I'm getting frustrated, if I'm starting to really judge my success, or if I'm starting to get angry or upset or nervous, all of these feelings take us into a stress response. And that stress response prevents us from healing. So even if we've got lots of different aspects or parts of us that are feeling lots of different emotions, we just need to pay witness. And what I haven't put on here, but an expression that I use quite a lot at the moment, is if we come into the present moment, into the now, as in Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, we become the neutral, observant witness. Okay, we need to be neutral, we need to be fully observant, and we need to witness what is going on. So this now present state is really key to being able to help ourselves come out of that stress response. Obviously, as well as some tools that we have to do that. Okay. So we're going to put ourselves in the driving seat much more easily if we can start to identify where we are and do that by kind of not being caught up in that vortex of everything that's going on, but come into the stillness inside that storm, sitting in the center, sitting in the quiet while we look at everything else that's going on around us so we can make more sense of it. Okay. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask me. Can somebody just send me a message in the chat box just so that I can see if I actually get a message, because I haven't received any. Nothing's coming up, so okay. So having established where we are, oh, we've got a hand up. I've got a couple of hand ups. Okay, now I haven't done this before, but I'm gonna. Oh, it's gone again. Well, those of you that have got your hand up, I'm assuming you've got a question. Okay. Alem, I'm gonna unmute you. Is that okay? Can you hear me? Can you speak? Okay. Do you have a question, Alem? Okay, I can't hear you, I'm afraid. Sorry, I can't hear you. Um, let's come out and see if we've got a question in the question box. Okay. Only this question box. Okay, thank you, Sid. Okay, so it looks like I'm gonna have to come back to this box. Okay, thank you. So you can still see this anyway. So when we've established where we are, we actually get more clarity on what we can do about it. So step 2 is really about looking at how we got to where we are. Now in here it's called permissions as well. Okay, I've given it a few different names, but they all add up to the same thing. This is where we look at what has been predisposing us, what has been going on. Do we have past traumas? Do our family have past traumas? Did we have traumas at birth? What happened in those kind of 6 years of growing up, where we learn and download the basic information that helps us make sense of the world? What is our genetic predisposition? Okay, we take all of those things into consideration. We take all of the things that have happened and the traumas that have happened in our life into consideration, and we start to paint a picture, if you like. We start to make it clearer as to all of the things that have been contributing to the threshold, my health threshold, the things that have been impacting on my ability to respond to stressful situations. And we look at where we've been giving power away, where we've been becoming a victim in different situations, and how we've kind of been eroding away at our energy resources, let's say, and what it is that we've been doing to basically get us into the health position that we're in. And again, part of this is looking at the intelligence of the body and looking at what the body's been doing. So it's a real kind of journey of investigation. And you'll see at this point, we're still not really trying to fix or trying to heal anything. We're trying to get a really clear idea. We're kind of doing this in-depth investigation and audit that I feel is lacking. One of the things I talk about a lot is there is no secondary gain, and I'll talk about that in a little while. There is no secondary gain. Okay, secondary gain is actually the real reason that we cannot let go of a strategy, a pattern of behavior, a symptom. So what we're doing here is we're turning everything around on its head, and instead of coming up against a secondary gain later on, we are looking at everything that's going on that has set up your current health status. So we're looking under every rock, we're actually turning everything around so that we can begin to have a bit more respect, if you like, a bit more respect for what's going on. And an expression I used in a training recently was honoring the animal. And we'll talk more about the animal part of ourselves in a little while. Okay. So having looked at this second stage, this second part of how we got there, we then start to look at, knowing what we know now, what is it that is kind of creating my symptoms and my behaviors? What is it that what is the meaning I've given things that have happened to me that have started to create the patterns and the responses that I give? So if we think back to what I said before about the difference between, something's either a threat to survival or it's safe. And okay, we have varying degrees of how dangerous or how safe something is. But ultimately, if it is a threat to survival, I must deal with that first. Now, what happens is, of course, as we grow up individually, we all develop our own understanding of what is safe and what is a threat to survival. And having developed that understanding of what is a threat to survival, we then obviously need to, because of our survival instinct, we need to perceive that, and we need to go out into the world, and we need to be ready for that, because we need to not let that happen. So understanding what my perceptions and what my concept of safety is and what my concept of danger is starts to give me a picture about how I'm responding and why I'm responding the way I am. So we have a very deep, in-depth look at the basic survival intelligence of the body, the fundamental hierarchical response and the work of Stephen Porges, and we look at the polyvagal theory, and we look at what creates safety, and then what is a threat to safety and survival, and how the body responds in a very specific hierarchical order. If we can, we will run away first. If we can't run away, we will fight. And there is a misconception about the fight, because it's not just a fight, it's a fight to win. It's a fight to the death. It's a do or die situation in a fight flight. Okay? It is, I have to fight to win. So if we're operating in a situation in a fight response, so or angry, for example, it is a misconception that that is a good state to be in order to succeed with something, because we're not looking for win-win. We're not seeing things in a whole brain state, in a fully resourced state. We are triggered into I must win at all costs. Okay, so we investigate that in terms of our bodily responses and our behavioral responses, our biological behavioral responses. Okay, we start to differentiate between what is a biological response and what is a strategy that I have developed. And sometimes I have a combination of the two. So I can learn a strategy from somebody, but my fundamental biological responses are the overriding responses to danger, and they are in my physiology and in my behavior. Okay, those of you, I can see some people in the list, those of you that have studied in German New Medicine and Meta Medicine will know those as constellations, but they are a biological adaptation and response. I call those resolution seeking behaviors, because what we're doing, of course, is if my physical adaptations are not enough, I need to adopt new perceptions. I need to shift, either in, for example, in my hormone balance that makes me see things differently, but I get a shift, and those chemical shifts, those biological shifts, change the way I behave and respond for my survival. Okay, and then on top of that, I also have my learnt responses as well. So we start to look at this, and we start to look at how we differentiate between what is the symptom, and that could be a behavior, of course, so that could be a physical symptom. What is the trigger that has told me it's time to do that, and what has happened in the past that I've given a meaning to, that meaning tells me to have that response when that trigger is a cue for a behavior. Okay, so we start to examine all of that, and you'll notice again, we're still not fixing anything. We are now becoming deeply in tune with the intelligence of my survival response, and the expression of honoring the animal really starts to come into its own here. This is where we start to look at how I'm operating as an animal. I'm an animal. We're mammals. Humans are mammals, and I'm an animal on this planet. And I need to be alive to achieve any level of self-actualization, any level of, in fact, any healing, any growth and repair, any self-actualization, any spiritual awakening. If I'm to do it as a human being on this planet, I've got to be alive first. So it doesn't matter how enlightened I feel I am or I want to be. If there is a threat to my survival, then my overriding response will be my animal response. Okay. Now, as we become more aware and more enlightened, of course, being enlightened doesn't mean getting over being an animal and moving on from it. It means appreciating it, accepting it, integrating it, and respecting it for what it's doing for us. It's part of us. Okay. So, please, if you've got any questions, you can try waving, but if I can open the mic and hear people, I will. If not, I'll come back and check the box in a bit. Rebecca, you've got your hand up. I'm going to try and see if I can hear you, okay? So, hi, Rebecca. Do you want to speak? I'm afraid I can't hear you either. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to have to ask you if you've got a question, just put it in the box and I will try to get back to it, okay? Thanks. Okay. So, knowing exactly what's going on, knowing what that means that we're actually going to spend time investigating the intelligent processes of the body, what the body actually does, how it does it. So we look at on a cellular level how the body is adapting to very, very specific threats, very specific requirements for survival. And we go into the intricacies of the way in which the body is formed and the way the brain is formed. And we look at the way in which the body works as a full system, right down to a cellular level, and how, when we perceive a threat or we experience a threat to survival, the body begins to adapt. And we look at how that gets caught in a process, because the adaptation itself is normal, it's correct. Okay, the body's designed to do that. What isn't good is that if the body gets stuck in that process, it actually starts to develop a disease because it is stuck in the process. Not because it has the process, but because it's stuck in the process. I made a post recently that basically said that if you are in a constant threat to survival, or you are in a state of cognitive dissonance, you will develop a disease. And cognitive dissonance is a term, it's a proper kind of, I don't know if it's a medical term, but it's certainly a term. I mean, it's in Wikipedia, so it's got to be real, right? It talks about having two beliefs, two truths, and because I believe them both to be true, I have a dissonance. I have a discomfort, a mismatch in my system. And that is actually what causes conflicts. It's taught more in German New Medicine, and it's kind of gets slightly overlooked in meta medicine. But it's basically when we have two things that we believe and we can't reconcile them because they're opposite to each other, but we believe them both to be true. So imagine, for example, a bad neck is caused by a feeling that I need things are not fair and I need things to be fair, and I need to hold my head up and say this is not right. Okay, so I have a desperate need to do that. It's actually kind of an existential thing. It's part of who I am to do that. I must stand up and say this is unfair. This is not right. I must hold my head up. But I have an equally true belief that if I hold my head up, it's dangerous for me, and I'll get it lopped off, or everyone will hate me, or I'll be left out, and of course that also is not safe. That is a deep requirement for me to stay safe and not let that happen. So now I have dissonance. Now I have a conflict in the system, and it's when we have these two opposing conflicting beliefs that I end up stuck in a process. I must hold my head up, but I can't hold my head up because it's not safe. But I must hold my head up because otherwise I can't exist as who I am, and I must be me, and I must say this because I see this is unfair. But I can't hold my head up because everyone's going to hate me, or I'll get pushed out of the group and I'll be alone. And so this cognitive dissonance, this clash of beliefs, gets locked in our system. Okay, so and if you want, I can do a separate little video about that, as I'm starting to kind of explain that a bit more clearly now. So once we start to find that, once we start to find what are these two things that are holding my illness in place. It's one thing to trace back to what the tissue is doing. It's another thing. It's a deeper thing to get what the body's doing and why it's still doing it. Why is it stuck in that process? So the body starts to adapt when I don't cope with things on a mental or emotional level, and if I'm not dealing with it with my other strategies, the body basically steps in and says, come on, so in the neck example I'm giving you, the body starts saying, come on, hold your head up. And I'm saying, yeah, I want to hold my head up. No, but I can't. Yeah, and the body starts saying, come on, you need to be stronger to hold your head up. We need to build your neck up so it's stronger. We need to create more strength in your neck so we can hold your head up. And that's why we get that program running, and that's why it gets stuck. So until we can reconcile those two different parts of us, and we'll talk about parts in a little while, but until you can reconcile those parts, you're going to have that dissonance and you're going to have disease. Okay? So once we know what's going on, we can start to look at how we manage and how we work with those parts of us that are holding that information. And obviously we've learned that from somewhere. It's either an experience we've had or it's an experience that someone else has had. And basically we are trying to reconcile these things as for our survival. And of course, we naturally, biologically, not just in terms of what we teach our children, but as animals, we need to pass on. If I've had a survival issue, I need to pass that on to my children, and they need to pass it on to theirs. So, in terms of turning genes on and off, if I've had a severe a danger and a threat to my survival, my body's adapted to the point where it's actually switched on genes to enable my body to respond in certain ways, in quite drastic ways. Obviously, the more drastic the threat to survival, the more equally drastic the response my body has. But it's intelligently turned on a process, and of course, I need to pass that on. If children are born in a war zone, it's not a priority to be highly intelligent. It's a priority to be strong and to be able to cope with what I'm being born into. We are constantly evolving, constantly adapting, and it's only through being able to teach the body that we don't need certain things that have been turned on or certain skills anymore, by reconciling them and reintegrating those parts that are holding that information, then we can actually heal things. This is why we get people and ladies who can have a test to see if they're predisposed to breast cancer, and they've got a certain gene turned on. Okay, it makes sense that if in my family line there has been a past trauma where somebody had a severe trauma and that gene was switched on, that they're going to pass that on in the family line, so that people further down the family line can deal with the same possible trauma. So in order to develop breast cancer, if you've got the various factors in place, if you've got the gene turned on and you've inherited the belief as well from the family line of the way of you perceive the world, which is being passed on to you, then you end up having the circumstances that are likely to create that disease. Then obviously you will have a higher chance of developing breast cancer. But it's all of those factors. It's all of those things. So we may have a predisposition, but it's about having the factors in place that will cause the body to go into that protective adaptation in terms of survival. And again, it's not about the change or the adaptation, it's about getting stuck in the process. Okay? So we can start to look at, what do we do about that? How do we address those intelligent parts of our system and of our psyche that are holding this information and holding these survival skills? And the technique that I've developed, heart focused healing, I will introduce to you. I'm pretty sure we're not going to have time to go through it, I'm afraid. So, as promised before, I will do a separate introduction to the technique. But basically, we are staying with the theme of not trying to fix anything, not trying to get rid of anything. And when we talk about healing, we are actually working with love and respect and honoring the parts of us that have been holding this information and these adaptations. We're not in any way trying to even clear them, which is an expression I was using for quite a while. We're not trying to clear them. We're trying to reintegrate those parts of us that have, I think it's Dr. Robert Scare that talks about trauma capsules. When we have a trauma, we isolate a part of us holds that information, and it becomes like the go-to way to deal with any similar event coming up. And until we give new meaning to those events, we aren't going to evolve them, and we're not going to release the need to respond in that way. So that's how we work with this process. Okay, so we use the messages from the body. We use the adaptations the body's making to show us what has happened in the past and what is causing those adaptations. Excuse me. Okay. So, knowing how to do it. If we can understand the concept I introduced earlier about the fact that something's either safe or not safe. Something is either, if it's a threat to my survival, like maybe getting rid of a strategy that I use for survival, that's then going to trigger me as well. But anything that I do that keeps me safe, it's going to be running and it's going to be working for me beyond my conscious choice. So these parts of me that are holding that information are running in the subconscious all the time, and any threat I perceive to survival, remember, that's something that doesn't have to necessarily really be a threat to survival. It can be just something I perceive to be a threat to survival. That is going to trigger a response, and if I'm in that response, I can't be in rest or repair or growth or self-awareness and self-actualization. It's just not a priority. My priority is be alive, get safe. Now I can move into rest, repair, growth, building resilience, developing wisdom. All those wisdom and physical resilience are all about growth. So we need to start to be able to notice what it is that's happening when I'm in stress and when I'm coming out of stress, and how to come out of stress more often, how to come out of stress so that I can allow these parts to heal. And I feel a lot of the way that people working more recently, I've noticed, we have such a desperate desire to heal things that we're forcing ourselves to heal things without really understanding them. We're doing it the wrong way around. We may get some learning when we come out the other side, but what we've done is actually trigger ourselves into the first phase, into this phase of stress, and kind of forced our way out of it. And if you're not careful, what will happen is you either re-trigger yourself when there's no need to do that, or you will push yourself or push someone else to act, and it's the kind of faking and fooling around aspect, is to act like they are changing. Yeah, it's okay. Oh, I feel better now. But actually all you're doing is kind of going through, paying lip service to the process because that's the safest thing to do, and then just developing a different strategy. So you still haven't dealt with the issue, you still haven't got to the root cause, and you still haven't changed it, let's say for the better. You haven't healed it. What you've done is you've pushed your intelligent responses to the point where they have had to let go of a process or a response, strategy, but so they've adopted another one. Okay, and I see that a lot in therapy, where people are so desperate to help other people that they kind of end up pushing them to just shift their strategies. And that's why we've been going around in circles. So like I say, if you've come to this um, um, webinar and you're thinking about taking conscious health practice because you're stuck, this is what we look at very, very specifically. Why have you been going around in circles? Why haven't you still healed that one thing that you still want to heal? And usually it's because you're trying so hard to heal it, you don't understand what it's doing and how it's been working for you. And something else has to happen first. Everything's not in place for that change to happen. It's not yet safe for that change to happen. We're going to come on to that in a moment. Okay, so that's what we look at. And throughout all of these steps, there are a series of exercises that we use to focus that awareness and to explore each of these things. Okay. So finally, the sustainability of change. Instead of going around in circles, it's a bit like, I've got an addiction. So I smoke, but then I stop smoking, so then I eat more. We just end up shifting the ground and just moving around in circles. And we want to break those patterns. We want to break that, what is actually an intelligent kind of strategy shuffling, really. And as we start to do that, we start to become more and more curious about how amazing we really are. How, I've watched myself this last couple of weeks. I kind of felt I was really getting nicely sorted and everything was falling into place. And then I pushed myself outside of my comfort zone again to take some very big steps into things that I had been nervous about, having had chronic fatigue. The idea of committing myself to a lot of regular content and a lot of regular appointments was something I had to really do work on to get through. And instead of being where I was, which was annoyed with myself or disappointed with myself or trapped in those cycles of those patterns, even if, and this last week or two, I've seen myself play out a couple of those patterns. I've just been able to remain very curious about what is triggering me, what is not in place yet that needs to be in place that would allow me to release this. So it's really taking that secondary gain thing and turning it on its head and saying, what's not in place that I'm not letting go of this, or I'm not moving forward in this. Okay, a really big turnaround. Okay, so as we develop new skills, we start to be able to develop more awareness. We start to be able to integrate those skills and just look at ourselves differently, look at what our body's doing differently. Okay, so one of the ways in which this is now an exercise that's in the handout, and we can't spend as long on it as I would or as you are encouraged to in the workshop. But it's just to give you an idea. Obviously, you can go away and you can do this again by yourself and think about this in terms of your general overall health issues, or you can use this in your, for one specific thing. That's also okay. And that is how this is designed to be used. I believe at the moment I haven't found anything else outside of this. If I find another aspect, it kind of still fits into this. And I believe that this could fit when we go into communities. So with Caroline and the Community Resilience Network and working in Bosnia and with severe trauma, this fits that. This fits for communities, for individuals, for the workplace. And I'm looking at how I use this with my husband Vic with our work together. So I believe that in order for change to happen, whether it's on a deep personal level or on a group level or a community or workplace level, these 6 areas need to be fulfilled. They need to be addressed. So for yourself, if you've got that handout, that's great. If not, if you've got a pen and paper anywhere, if you want to just make a note of a current issue that you would like to work on. So I've had a couple of questions come in, and maybe you would like to use the question that you've put to me as the thing to just reflect on as we look at these 6 areas. So whether it's a physical symptom, whether it's just a stuck belief that you have, and a couple of people have written in about those stuck beliefs. So it could be an emotional issue, a physical issue, a particular pattern of behavior, a particular mental processing, a thought, a stuck memory. It can be any issue that you're dealing with, really. And you'll notice there's a box for you to make a note of that in above a spider thing that looks like a spider's web. It's actually called a radar graph. Okay, so in that box, it says that today the issue I choose to focus on is. And just give yourself a moment to make a note in that box of what the issue you're going to use as a vehicle to explore these 6 areas. Okay. And while you do that, I'm just going to come out and see if anybody else has written anything. Okay, some agreement about information on cognitive dissonance. Okay. Okay. So what causes people to have such different responses in adrenal stress? Okay. In answer to the question about what causes people to have such different responses to adrenal stress, because there's a hierarchy in the way in which we respond to things, it will depend on how that person perceives the level of the level of threat. And if I can't fight or flight for whatever reason, either, for example, literally the tiger's too close, or it surprised me too quickly, and so therefore the fight or flight wasn't an option. Or, imagine somebody, for example, in the concentration camps, the people that we deal with in Bosnia, they're physically restrained, so they can't literally, again, can't fight or flight. Or I'm a child and I've been chastised, or something's happened and I can't run away because it's more dangerous. If I run away, I'm going to get grabbed and I'm going to get hit again, or something else is going to happen to me. Or if I speak up, something even more dangerous is going to happen. So the way in which I respond is very much dependent upon the level of threat. And when we talk about dissonance, it's that I need I need to not let this happen for my survival, but actually to tell somebody is an even greater threat to survival. So some people are constantly triggered into the fight flight, and some are triggered into the freeze. And of course, the body is then being told to do a different thing. So depending on what it is my body is choosing as the best option for survival will depend on whether I'm triggered into a sympathetic or a parasympathetic response. Okay, so sympathetic nervous system is the fight flight. Everything speeds up. The heart rate speeds up. I get the release of cortisol and adrenaline, and I get all of the the increase in heart rate, the increase in breathing, and all the blood goes from the extremities and from the gut to the main muscle groups for response. That's a sympathetic response, which obviously has a specific requirement from the adrenals that secrete cortisol. And of course, adrenal burnout is when I've been triggering that either for a very long time on a low level, or just I keep triggering it all the time. However, the freeze response is a parasympathetic response, and not to be confused if you've done any meta-medicine with second phase. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with second phase. Yes, second phase, where we're going to rest and repair, is what we would call predominantly being in parasympathetic. Everything slows down. I'm not needing to run away anymore. I'm going into healing. But actually, I'm safe there. The trigger into the freeze response is a parasympathetic response, i.e. my system slows down, but it's not because I'm safe, it's because it's my best chance of survival because it's extremely dangerous. I'm in a danger situation. Okay, so the word parasympathetic refers quite literally to what happens in the autonomic nervous system, not the reason for it happening. So if somebody is constantly in a state of freeze, and usually what happens is we'll go into freeze and then we'll come out and we'll go into fight flight after. We'll have the oh my god, and then and then when the danger's sort of partly passed, we need to fix it. We need to complete the event. We need to do what it was we couldn't do when we were frozen. So now we have a fight flight as well. But for some people, they could even be in a constant, almost a catatonic, constant state of freeze. And of course, they're still in stress, but they have a different response in the system. So it just depends on the individual and how they're getting triggered. Okay. So coming back to looking at what is it that you are going to focus on, we've got these 6 elements. And we've got knowledge. So if you imagine now looking at your particular problem, your particular thing you haven't been able to work on and heal, I'm suggesting that one of these areas you need something more. It's something that is not in place yet. So either you don't have the knowledge that you need to be able to work on this, to give new meaning and new understanding to it, in order to process it, in order to basically reintegrate it and to learn from it. You don't have the right knowledge in order to let this go. You don't have the resources to do that, to make it happen. You might not have the skills. You haven't got the right support. You haven't given yourself permission, or you feel that someone else needs to give you permission, and you don't have the right commitment. And when I say commitment here, I'm kind of referring to the ecology of the change. If I do this and things are different, do I have other things in place in the future that mean it's okay for me to commit to this change? Okay. So I just want you to, for each of these things, I'm afraid I can only go through them quite quickly, else we're not going to get to talk about the other 2 aspects I want to share with you as well. In particular, that's the heart-focused healing. So I need to give us time to just go over that as well. So I want you to have a think and come back to this perhaps after the call, and maybe if you've got questions after the webinar, you can certainly write to me and I'll endeavour to answer them. What we're going to do is an appraisal. I want you in your own time to make a list of everything to do with this particular problem, everything you know, everything that what books and programs and trainings and what information have you got that helps you with this. And then also a list of maybe what's missing. What is it you know that you need to know and you don't yet know? Okay, what is it that would help you to find out? Okay. What resources do you have? So resources really mean where could you go? You've got the library, you've got the internet, you've got people you could ask for information. Where could you get advice? Is it something practical, like you need to go to the Citizens Advice Bureau? Do you need to see your doctor? Can you do some more digging around on the internet? Okay. The skills, and this is an interesting one for a lot of people. We go and learn more skills. And I'll show you in a moment an exercise that I did in the first training where I realized I had a particular pattern of behavior. So what skills do you already possess that are helping you with this, and what maybe might you need to learn to do or get more information or more practice, let's say, to do to help you? Okay. Support. What kind of support do you have? Have you really thought about that? Perhaps you've got people that if you really, really needed them, they would be there. You've never thought of asking them. Maybe you can spend a bit of time looking at all the different friends and colleagues and masters and mentors and family, and maybe there's particular types of support group for your particular illness or ailment. that you could ask for help with from. Sorry. And permissions, and this is a really interesting one. So I've put a bit of more of an explanation here. This is how you're limiting yourself and not allowing yourself to deal with this problem. Maybe because it will affect someone else if you do. So, for example, I can't be bouncing around with health because my husband's unwell and it'll make him feel bad because he can't do the same thing. So this is a permissions thing. I don't have permission to be bouncing around. I can't lose weight because my husband's insecure and he's afraid I'll run off with someone else if I'm slimmer and more attractive and I have more confidence. So again, I want to, but I can't. Can you see how this cognitive dissonance starts to come in? I want to, but I can't. I'd like to do this, but I can't because of this. Okay, and they are equally as strong. Okay. And commitment, I've added ecology into this. So I found this one really interesting. So how committed am I to changing this? I found with the eczema that I had on my hand, I was saying to people, oh, well, I'll arrange a session with you, and yeah, I really must look at that, and yeah, I know what I've got to do, but I'll get around to doing it, and I wasn't getting around to doing it, and it was very interesting. So when I did this exercise, so I looked at, so now in your own time again, now what you would do is look at each of these areas, and for this particular thing you're addressing, on a scale of 0 to 10, how fulfilled are you in each of those areas? So this is what a rough idea of what mine looked like. So, skills, knowledge, and resources, I'm not so bad actually, and support's not bad. Permissions, or maybe I somehow feel I need permission, and I was interested to see that my gut reaction wasn't as high as I thought it might have been. I thought I was pretty independent and didn't need anybody else's kind of input on that. But notice that the commitment is like, I think I've got a 1 there. And I realized that, yeah, I've got everything else in place, but in fact, not the commitment. And what I do, my pattern of behavior was, oh, well, yes, I've got to fix that problem, but I'll get another book on it, or I'll go on another course, or I'll have a chat about it, but I won't actually do it. So I revert back to the areas of strength, and I avoid the area that needed my attention. So this allowed me to focus my attention on what I needed to look at. And when I did that, I found that I needed to explore what would happen if I fixed it. More importantly, what did I feel wouldn't happen? What wouldn't I be able to do anymore if I changed this and if I healed this symptom? And it brought up some very interesting things about being afraid of past events reoccurring and not having another way of preventing them from reoccurring. And so you can see how this starts to get us to look at the areas that need to be in place in order for it to be safe for me to make those changes. Now, obviously, this is a very quick way of looking at this, but we've only got a quarter of an hour left and I still have a lot to share with you, so please bear with me that I'm skimming through it. Okay, and obviously on the course and the training we go through this in detail, and what I aim to do is to do a little separate recording about each of these 6 areas to explain them in more detail, to talk you through them. So as you fill this in, you can go through 6 short videos to get more of an understanding. Okay. I think my wonderful technical person said he was going to join us. So if you're hearing all this, Ian. Oh yeah, Ian's here. So the guy that's helping me do the website, and he's doing a wonderful job. I'm sure he's making a note of all these promises I'm making for all these videos, so that's good. Okay, so root cause analysis we've touched on. Those of you that know me already know that this was one of my specialist areas of being able to make that connection between the particular symptom and the original trigger for it, the original event, and where the past trauma, what had happened in the past trauma that made the body go into this adaptation. This is it in a nutshell. Okay, the intelligence of the body, it's so intricate that as the brain developed, it developed from the older brain into the newer brain. So we've got the brain stem with the kind of fundamental survival mechanisms. And then we go a bit more complex into the cerebellum. And then, of course, we come into what we call the new brain, into the cerebral cortex. And then the blue bit in the middle, medulla just means middle bit. Okay, so then we get this. The bit inside, in the center of the cerebral cortex, is the bit that controls the musculoskeletal system and other parts. Okay, so this structure correlates and works with the very specific cell structures of the body. And as the embryo develops in the womb, all of the tissues derive from 3 different types of tissue. So there is an inner germ layer, and by germ we mean germination, the sort of beginning of that type of cell. So we've got stem cells, and stem cells become one of 3 types of cells, and then everything in the human body is made up from those 3 different types of cells. So this is kind of that in a nutshell. The brain correlates and is connected to those different tissues, and there is a theme in the development of those tissues. And it's this structure developed by a German doctor of internal medicine called Harmer. He made this connection with the neurology and the neuroscience, and this cell structure, this development of the cell structure, is called ontogenesis. So this ontogenetic development of all of the organs and organ systems from these particular cells. He found that those cells responded in a different way when they were in stress. The yellow and the green at the bottom, the older brain increases in its function. It makes more cells when it's put under stress. And then when it comes out of stress, it needs to get rid of those cells. And then the other tissues that are connected to the newer brain actually decrease and ulcerate in their stress phase. So, for example, in a vein, to let more blood through quickly, I get an ulceration of the wall of the vein, and it basically increases the volume. It makes a bigger space for the more blood to get through. So its function is still to increase the capacity, but it does it in a very different way. So once we know this structure, we can look at what the tissue is doing. We can know what type of cell structure it's derived from, and if we know that, we know what part of the brain it's connected to, and what basically the theme of that developmental stage is. You'll notice the early brain at the bottom, it's about digestion and the survival of the species. We then go into being protection, and the parts of the body like the dermis of the skin and the meninges layer and the peritoneum and the pericardium and the pleura, they're all protective sacs around the body. They're all made from another type of cell. The whole of the musculoskeletal system is made from another type of cell tissue. And then the nervous system and the skin is made from, we can see here, ectodermal tissue. That's a very, very quick explanation of basically the whole of what metamedicine is about and German medicine. The point is that it's an intelligent system, it has an intelligent response, and if we can understand that structure, we can actually use that to work out what type of event and what type of threat to survival we must have experienced in order to trigger one of the cell tissues into that response. So in terms of, let's say, gastrointestinal increase of cells, which is what a cancer is, you can see that this is the yellow box down the bottom, and it's in the digestive system, and you can see that it increases when it's in stress. And this is not being able to digest something. It can often be talked about as indigestible anger, and it's the kind of thing where I've got to hold on to it and I've got to figure it out, and I just can't figure it out, so I can't let it go. But I'm holding on to some anger about it, but I must hold on and I must work it out. So my body is trying to help me do that. Okay, so there's an example. Okay, so there's the crash course in metamedicine. So keeping all of this theme together, the technique that I've developed for working with these intelligent parts is to recognize that we're not trying to get rid of them. We're not trying to push them away. We're not trying to fix them. Imagine how different our children would feel if, when there's something distressing them, or they have a symptom, or they have a behavior, we stop trying to fix them and we just love them and try to understand why they're behaving that way. If we can accept that every behavior that we have is hardwired and within us to actually survive, nobody would behave in a way that would cause damage or cause suffering to anyone else if we didn't have fear, for survival. So if a child is misbehaving or a child is ill or we're unwell, it's because we have a survival need that's not being met. Okay? Now, the irony is, of course, much with the best will in the world, often parents will take their children to therapists and say, you know, please help my child, please help fix my child. She's got this or she's got that or something's wrong. And all the child is hearing is something's wrong with me. And basically, I can't be loved until I'm fixed. I've got to be fixed. So this whole concept of creating safety through accepting and appreciating that something's going on, and it's better for us to understand what's going on rather than try and fix it. Most times, if we understand it, accept it, and appreciate it, we won't need it anymore because we'll have understood it, accepted it, and appreciated it, and we can let it go. Can you see it's a different way to evolve our meaning of something? If we keep trying to fix something, we keep pushing ourselves into stress. So the fundamental way that I now work is, I had two people with specifically with anxiety on the last course, the middle course. And when we said, should we not try to fix that at the moment? We're not going to take away your strategies that you use at the moment until we understand them better. And both of those people, I could physically see their demeanor change and they relax. And for both of those people, without trying to fix anything, without trying to tap away or go into the timeline somewhere and go back to when it all happened, because we didn't do that, they just started to understand their intelligent responses. Those people have started to change those patterns, okay, because they're just understanding them. So heart-focused healing is a way in which we don't try to fix or push away somebody or a part of us, but what we do is we recognize we have that part and we invite that part to step out so that we can send love to it and appreciate it and help it to reconnect. Dr. Robert Scare says in a trauma, all it takes for trauma is powerlessness and a threat to survival. And in that trauma, we become isolated and disconnected. So the key to heart-focused healing is to reconnect those parts. And in doing so, we can evolve the meaning. That part gets a new meaning. In a trauma, we have a very narrow bandwidth of awareness. We don't have a real peripheral state of awareness when we're in a trauma. It becomes very focused and foveal. And of course, as we're growing up, we have a very narrow bandwidth of awareness. So, what you know now is different to what you knew when you were 3 or 4 years old. But that 3 or 4-year-old part of you is stuck with that belief, and that's the belief, and that's the way in which you operate when something similar comes up and triggers you. That 3-year-old needs to be reconnected and reintegrated so that it's no longer isolated with that information. Okay, so in the next 6 minutes, we're going to go through the steps. So the first thing that we do is recognize that, as I've talked throughout, we can't be in a state of fight, flight, and rest and repair at the same time. So we have to deal with the trigger, the body being in this freeze or fight, flight. Okay. So the heart is the largest electromagnetic field of the body. It governs the rest of the electromagnetic fields. It is, I think it was 60 times, the electromagnetic field is 60 times stronger than the brain, and the electromagnetic field is around 5,000 times stronger than the brain. So the heart is the governing field. Okay, there is no good and bad energy, there's just energy. When we deal with energy, we are staying out of giving a meaning to what comes up. Okay. And we're using love. We're using love to heal physical, mental, and emotional and social issues. We're just using the vibration of love to increase the vibration and raise the vibration of stuck emotions and stuck perceptions. Okay, a trauma is an incomplete event, and we are actually designed to grow stronger. We're designed to have things happen to us. It's not that we're supposed to stop those things happening, but we're supposed to process them and not get stuck. And we only get stuck because as animals, we're not releasing our freeze like animals in the wild do. So we need to learn these new ways to do that. Okay, and it's only a part of us that holds that information. So basically, understanding your parts, I just love these graphics, and how to reintegrate them. If we imagine that, we are connected, we're always connected. We may be the wave, but we never stop being the wave. When we never stop being the sea when we become the wave. But things happen to us, and in social situations and community, we have this. So this is part of Porges' theory now. Society and social connection and social cues like eye contact, body language create safety. But then if a trauma happens to me, I can be completely disconnected. Okay. And when that happens, that's when our animal mode kicks in. It has to kick in because I have to survive. So I feel disconnected now and I become more densely animal. I start operating like an animal until I can get back to a safe position, and then I can go back into feeling my connection. But in this powerlessness and this threat to survival, I'm now just kind of in animal mode, and I'm either freezing or I go into fight or flight, whichever is the best, most useful method of survival. If I can run away, I will. If not, I will fight. It's a do or die fight. Or I freeze. Or a combination. Freeze first, then fight, then run away. And then all of that information is stored, and I basically develop a survival strategy, and that information that is stored becomes my go-to information for anything that is possibly a threat in the future. It doesn't have to even be a real threat, but if I think it might happen, then I go back to that pattern of behavior. That's how I deal with it. So I've stuck to using the expression parts, but in fact, what parts really stands for me is this programmed aspect that is replacing true self. So that true self is the bit of me that's connected, but in fact, I get split up into parts and into these animal parts that hold this information for me, and unless I can update them and reintegrate them, I'm going to continue to operate from them. So what we do is we don't try to fix them, but we try to understand them better, and we try to reintegrate them. We actually give them the love that they didn't have at the time to resource them, to reconnect them. We help them to find that sense, that connection again. Okay, so this is the process, and I'm sorry it's so quick, but we are actually, at least we're coming to a close now. The setup is to preferably using the root cause analysis. We find the right parts. But in answer to a question I had earlier about what do I do if I get this feeling of this lack of faith when I do the light, there is a part that's holding this lack of faith. So just send love to that part. At any stage of this process, if something isn't working, it means something else needs to work first, and therefore we can just bring our attention to the part of us that's holding the thing that needs to be dealt with first. It's just another part that needs love and attention, validation, witness, and love, basically. So we bring our awareness to the heart area, and we breathe in and out of the heart, and we put the problem down. This is very different to the techniques you may have heard of before. We don't go into it. We're not going into the story, into the event. We put it down to one side, and we don't go there. We know what it is, and we just allow the part to come out in front. So we collect together all the energy that is related to that particular event without going into it. We bring all the memories, emotions, pictures, thoughts, smells, tastes. We bring them all together, and we invite the part that is holding all of that to step out front. And then depending on how you perceive that connection, we open up a connection to something greater. But in fact, it's possible to do it without that. I added that in because I know that there are one or two people I've worked with who felt that they may deplete their energy. So I wanted to give them a state of flow. But you can really get into a state of flow in a number of ways that allow you to share love without feeling that depletion. So it's all about just allowing the love to flow from your heart to this part. Okay. And we just continue to do that. And we send anything else out that is to do with this. And we then just send love to the part. Okay. When we have a sense the part's reconnected, that part can update their information. So they can actually get the learning, they can get the awareness and the understanding, and they can share that back with you. And interestingly, you don't need a conscious awareness of that. You can just receive that into your heart. And we can ask the part, as a result of that new information, what is the new belief that they can now have? Now, we don't need to do that with kids. We just ask them what they need to know, and when they know it, they can just take the part back into their heart and reintegrate it and flood that through the left and the right brain and through the system and out into the heart field, all through the system and all the way around, right to the core of the earth and out into the universe. Now, this is a very quick explanation. I understand that. But what we find is that at every stage of this process, there is an element of learning. I've had people go into a freeze release response and actually do trembles and tremors and shakes when they just ask the part to step out. Some I've had it when they reintegrate the part, when they get the learning, sorry. Some different people when they reintegrate the part and even when they send it out. So if we take our time doing this, it's incredibly simple, but it actually allows for us to get the learning, evolve the past meaning and reintegrate the past meaning and reintegrate that part back into us. Okay. What's particularly good about that is that we're kind of learning to love ourselves part at a time, which is really, really key. Okay. Now, we've come to the end of the webinar, and I'm not going to have time to talk to you about the dynamic health plan, but you do have it in the handouts. So it's kind of self-explanatory, although, of course, in the workshop, we go through it in great detail, and it will be something that we have ongoing support for. So just to quickly show you, it looks at the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, environmental, and nutritional support that your body and mind need, if you like, that you need to return to health. Everything from the small detail about whether you go for a walk or whether you do or don't eat something, right through to if it stresses you at work to sit next to a certain person, maybe don't sit next to them for a while you deal with your issues, sort of thing. So it's on every level. Okay. Again, there'll be another recording about this separately. So before I get messages from Ian and he tells me off for not doing the gift at the end, I am putting all of this online. I am doing a full workshop online, and to make it valuable, to give more value, as well as paying for the online course, you will get everybody that takes that course actually becomes a member. It's a year's membership. And not only do you get the online course, you actually get all of these things here. So you get the training, but you get the 7 main videos, but then step-by-step exercises and the downloadable material. You get the tutorials and the interviews and the extra resources, additional membership material, access to the webinars that other people pay for, discounts to live events, and a question and answer with me. I'm going to aim for once a month. Okay. Now, this is a paying thing. That's the general cost of it. So it's the same price as the 7 Steps to Conscious Health course, but online. But you get all this extra stuff free. what I'm doing to launch this is to give step 1 away for free. So you get the videos, the content, and you get to work through in more depth through that that first step. Okay. You will get a follow-up email that will enable you to sign up to get that free 1 step. So I hope you'll do that. If you've got any questions between now and then, please do ask me directly and email me, sam@intoalignment.com. And what will happen is you'll sign up for that, then you'll get an email when it's ready, which won't be long because Ian's working on things even though I was late giving him the content. And you'll be able to go through that completely with full access to that whole first unit, basically. Obviously, my hope is that you will think it's brilliant and want to continue with the rest of the course, but at the very least, if you just use that and you went off and you didn't, you would still get a lot out of it. Okay, so sorry for the rush. It seems to happen every time. I've got so much I'd like to share with you. If you want something answering in particular and you'd like a video response, just drop me a line and I will use that to create a piece of blog content that I can share with everybody. So last thing as we say goodbye, I'll just check for any questions, but I will have to answer them at the end now. So the HeartMath and loving ourselves, is that letting go? Not really, not quite, but in a way, HeartMath becoming present and becoming aligned and coherent basically means that we're very, very present, so we're not holding on to anything either, if that makes sense, Christina. It isn't a process of letting go, but it's actually a process of being present and coherent and fully resourced. And in that state, we can see things very differently. So that's a quick answer. Okay. So thank you so much for joining me. I've only run by 6 minutes. I think that's probably a first. And I've got no more pressing questions. I can see someone's also put that letting go really scares me. I'm not inviting anyone to let go. And if there's a part that isn't ready to let go, that's the part we send love to. Does that make sense, Christina? If we have a part that's afraid of letting go, we don't invite them to let go. That's not what we want them to do because that's a trigger. So what we do is we acknowledge the part that isn't ready to let go, or we acknowledge the part that, like another question, there is a feeling of lack of faith, or we acknowledge the part, like the other question about somebody feeling that there's no, why bother getting healthy and feeling good because you're just going to end up feeling bad again at some point anyway. All those are protective mechanisms, and there's a part of you holding that mechanism to prevent you from suffering, going into danger, or having something bad happen. All we do is we love that part. We don't try to change them. We don't try to force them to let go of anything. We just love them. And we keep loving them, and we keep loving them, and we keep sending them appreciation. And we appreciate that that part is doing something very, very valuable. Okay. Now, I know that's easy to say, and there may be parts of us that then get in the way and don't think we should do that. So we love that part. Okay. All of these parts are just intelligent adaptations that are there to protect us. That's all that we're doing in our physical, mental, and emotional state. We are surviving. We're creating survival and protection. So the best way to create safe and sustainable change is to stop trying to force change and is to accept that those parts of us are doing a specific job. And then one at a time, we can listen to them, validate them, witness and pay attention to what they're doing and appreciate them for what they're doing, help them become reconnected, help them to evolve their narrow bandwidth and view of what's going on so that they can grow and feel accepted and feel connected to you and to everything else, if you like, to that which is greater. They can stop being just the little wave and they can sense the sea again, if you like, to use that analogy. So we are we are not forcing change in anyone. Okay. So when is the medical system going to study the there are some questions I can that I've got that kind of require maybe a little bit more in-depth answer, and we've run out of time now. So I want to respect the fact that you've given up your valuable time to do this. I think I've answered the main questions, but I will go through them at the end, and I'll just make sure that if I don't feel I've given a satisfactory answer, I'll just add a little bit more, maybe in an email or whatever. But if I haven't answered your question, or you have another one as a result of this webinar, then please email me. Okay. So just remains to say thank you. Sorry, I've gone over 10 minutes. I think I did quite well to only go over 10 minutes. And I really sort of just want to say that I hope that you will be, that I'll see you there. There we go. I hope that I will see you signing up for the free Unit 1, the first step in the 7 steps to conscious health. And I look forward to making lots of amazing content for you so that you can share in the community and can continue your health journey. Okay, so thanks everyone, and thanks for sharing your valuable time with me, and hope to see you next time. Bye.